Hey everybody, what is going on? So in this section, we're going to talk all about active listening. So you guys learned a lot about different questions, but it's not enough just to ask the questions. You got to make the other person feel like you're listening. And to dive deeper into that, you may be listening to someone and you may be hearing everything that they have to say, but you got to make sure they can feel like you're actually listening. So sometimes you may be talking to someone and you may feel like they're not listening to you at all, but in reality, maybe they are, but then they just don't know how to physically show you that they actually are listening. So it's not enough just to listen to somebody. You got to make sure they feel like you're listening, because if they don't feel it, they think you're not, even if you are. And remember, when it comes to building rapport, you got to make the other person subconsciously think and feel, I like this person, I feel comfortable, I feel seen, I feel heard, I feel like what I say matters, right? Subconsciously, this is what you want. So how do you make someone feel these things when you ask a question and they're telling you things? How do you actively listen? And if you just look at someone in the face and you have zero facial expression and you're just there listening, they're going to feel like you're not listening, right? That's just how it is. However, you got to change this. So active listening requires more work on your end. And again, it's your job as a seller to do the additional work to make the other person feel comfortable. And that's what it means to be in professional sales. Now, here are going to be 5 different techniques you can use to become a better active listener and make it known that people feel like you're listening. The first one is using verbal cues. Like when somebody is talking, you could add, right, nod your head. Interesting, tell me more. So these are just little statements, little cues that people can latch onto, and it makes them feel like, they heard what I'm saying. Another strategy is using empathy statements, showing that you can see yourself in the other person's shoes. So an example of that is, I understand what you mean. That makes sense. That's pretty typical. That's common for a business like yours. I see that happen a lot. Right? So it's just that feeling of, I get you, I see you, I hear you, what you're saying resonates with me. So these are statements you can put throughout your entire conversation to make it feel like you are active listening to somebody. Now, another way to do it is actually repetition. So repetition works by repeating the other person's words exactly. So if the prospect says, it's so frustrating when I have to email every applicant individually, right? Let's say you're selling HR software. Salesperson can say, I know it can be very frustrating when you have to email every applicant individually. Have you tried anything to fix this? So you can see here I'm doing a combo where I'm actively listening and then asking them a question to learn more about their situation. And as you can see here, keywords are frustrating, email every applicant individually, right? That's the key phrase. And by just repeating what people are saying, subconsciously they know in their heads that you are actually listening because you're using the same words. Now, another example is rephrasing, meaning you're just rephrasing or resummarizing what someone just said, and then you're repeating it back to them in the form of however you want. It could be as a statement or a question. So let's say the prospect says, it's so frustrating when I have to email every applicant individually. So summarize and then repeat. It seems like you're using a lot of time emailing every applicant one by one. Just curious, have you done anything to change this? So as you can see here, I'm not repeating exactly what they're saying. I'm rephrasing it, resummarizing it, and then feeding it back to them. And when you're doing this, what people feel is that it's the same as a repetition, where they feel like you're listening because you're using the same phrasing, the same words, the same vibe, and people really gel with that. And the last technique we have is the emotional mirror, meaning you are remembering the other person's emotion in your head as you are listening. And when it's your turn to speak, you are actually going to feed back their same emotions and mirror them. So if a prospect says, it's so frustrating when I have to email every applicant individually, you could say, sounds like you're frustrated with da 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 da. So the key thing here is frustration, right? You understand the prospect feels frustration. You want to demonstrate that you also empathize with their frustration, and they're going to think there's this click in their heads where they think, wow, this guy totally gets me, or this girl totally gets me. And that's the emotion that you want when it comes to active listening. So let's summarize. We got 5 different techniques of active listening: verbal cues, empathy, statements, repetition, rephrasing, and the emotional mirror. So that's everything we got to cover when it comes to active listening. You want to sprinkle those in your sales cycle when you're asking questions or listening to a response when someone tells you something. And by doing these, you are going to build that rapport, get the other person to trust you, and more importantly, make them feel like they are heard. And once you do that, it's going to be so much more easier to get them to buy your product or service, because now they trust you more than just a salesperson, but almost like a friend.